Well, I'm glad the first half is over. You know, people should understand that the legislative session kind of reaches a peak as we deal with Senate bills that were introduced, and a lot of pressure to get those bills off the Senate floor and to move those over to the House. So it is a period of a lot of stress, and I think we're now past one of the milestones in the legislative session. Keep in mind this is a Republican-controlled Senate, so many bills that I had hoped would not come out did come out. Bills that I wanted to come out did not come out. So we just we're entering the phase where we're going to start working on House bills. So this is a different kind of session than we've had here in the last decade. So we do have a Republican-controlled Senate and a Democratic-controlled House. So now the two bodies need to figure out how to reconcile their differences. Commerce and Labor Committee, when you have this kind of division between Republicans and Democrats, becomes a real battlefield, and it was not different this year. We saw a great number of bills that were attacking labor standards in the state and attacking the middle class, really. When we attack the labor standards, we are attacking the middle class of the state. Bills dealing with restrictions on the prevailing wage, bills dealing with the attempt to roll back the minimum wage in this state, bills dealing with issues around worker comp and injured worker issues. We saw just a continual effort here to erode these standards in our state. Fortunately, only a few of those bills moved out of the Senate, but there are some bad bills still in the Senate, and we'll see what happens. But interestingly enough, as you know, we just had far too much attack and too little effort here to collaborate and work together toward common solutions on issues. I was really unhappy about that lack of ability to kind of sit down and work with the new Republican majority in the Senate on issues that they thought were important. Instead, we had bills coming to us and very little effort to really sit down and talk with us about those bills. Obviously, public safety is a huge issue in the 29th Legislative District, and the two bills that I did introduce, fortunately, did move out of the Senate. First bill dealt with stalking, which addressed a real tragic stalking death in our district 3 years ago of Jennifer Paulson, and I was very pleased to see that bill move off the floor. We are waiting for a House bill to come over to us as well, and hopefully this year we'll take some steps to address this problem of stalking in our community. The other bill deals with a competency to stand trial. We have our judicial system right now is bogged down with a huge queue of people waiting to be valued at Western State Hospital. Frankly, it will take 13 months to address that queue, and we need to speed that up because many of these people are mentally ill and should not be staying in our jails. They should be properly in the right treatment area for their illness. Pierce County, who came to me last December with the problem, developed a bill which I was very pleased to sponsor in the Senate, and it passed off the floor of the Senate. And it's an effort here in a temporary to reduce the number of people in this queue and get people through the system rather than having them bogged down in jails. Interesting enough, the disability community is very interested in this bill because they feel far too many people with mental illnesses are sitting in jails where they should be in appropriate community and hospital treatment centers. So I'm very pleased that bill is moving along because and keep in mind, it's a temporary bill. Once we reduce the queue, this program goes away. What it allows the counties to do is to hire their own evaluators when that queue gets too long. We are also trying to build up the number of evaluators at Western State so that they can handle the burden of this competency to stand trial issue. It's just a major problem. And it kind of reflects a major issue in the legislature this session, that being mental illness. I think we've had a number of bills that came from the Senate and a task force, in fact, to evaluate what's wrong with our mental health system in this state. We have far too many problems with it. Some of the gun violence that we've seen is directly related to mental health problems, and we need to figure out to do better here. What has happened is we have not provided the resources needed to help those people with mental illness, and hopefully from this task force and from several other bills that are working through the system, we will get there. So. We all know the primary reason we're here is to increase funding for K-12 education. That was what the court asked us to do, and that's what we should be doing. My frustration in the first part of this session was rather than addressing that issues, we were continuing the old effort here to reform K-12 education and add more costs to the system without addressing the fundamental need, and that is funding for K-12 education. Most of the studies suggest that the two things that we need to do to improve the performance of our kids in our schools is to put money into reducing class size from kindergarten to third grade, and the second thing is to actually provide all-day kindergarten for kids. Kids in those early years a lot happens to them in those early years, and that's critical time to put investments in our school system. We've passed bills putting those goals in front of us, but we have not funded that. And I saw bills, for example, we had a bill that came to the floor of the Senate, great idea. A bill would say, you know, you got to pass a reading exam in the third grade. It costs $76 million. And is that the way we want to go forward here? We should be addressing the key priorities of K-12 education and not adding more education reform issues to that table. It frustrates me very much, and I let my views be known on the floor of the Senate. So it's odd to me this year on the budget. Usually Ways and Means has heard a governor's budget by this time, and we start defining the parameters of the budget. This year, the Republican majority decided not to hear the governor's budget and have not heard any budget as in Ways and Means. All we've looked at are bills. We have not considered the budget. We are, frankly, in the next few weeks, we're supposed to produce a budget. But, you know, there's been very little work in Ways and Means with the full committee on this issue. I go back once again and state the priority is to get more dollars into K-12 funding, but we also have a $1 billion deficit just on meeting the needs that are already legally required in our budget. This is a big challenge, and you would think by this time in the session, frankly, we're almost, 30 days from the end of the session here, we would be further along on this project. This worries me. I think I hopefully that we'll begin to see the elements of a budget in the next few weeks. It worries me that we may be pushed into special session if that doesn't happen. But keep in mind, the Democrats are not in control here. This is a Republican budget, and it's their obligation to put a budget together and bring it to the Ways and Means Committee and eventually bring it to the floor of the Senate. We have serious issues in our state, and I can't help but emphasize too, K-12 education and higher education. And of course, the other issues, mental health. I think we obviously need to be addressing those issues in this budget, and hopefully we'll make some progress very soon.